Well, we're going to bust out a Ouija board for Halloween, and we're going to ask her ourselves.
Oh, that would be so
Frida
cool.
Yeah.
If Frida came through in a seance, like,
But what if she's
I would be
pissed?
She's
done.
going to be pissed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Art History Babes YouTube channel.
I'm not.
I'm Corrie.
I'm Jen.
We're the Art History Babes, and we have another installment of our 3-book series where we talk about books.
3 of them.
3 books, to be precise. We should each hold one, I think.
Okay, I'll
Because
hold
there's
this
3 of us,
one.
and there's 3 books. See? 3 books.
Ooh, so there's a theme here, which is...
Can you guess it?
It is our girl Frida. Today we are talking about 3 books about Frida Kahlo.
We have way more than 3 books of hers.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
we're gonna go with these 3.
We chose 3, and we're just gonna talk about them. First, we decided we're gonna start with the diary, correct?
Yes, this is an amazing book. I feel like anyone out there who loves Frida should buy this book. The introduction by Carlos Fuentes is really just an amazing little piece of writing in and of itself. There's some fun essays in there, fun in the sense that they are well written. They're not fun.
It's just a fun time.
It's not
It's
that
just a
fun.
light, fun time.
No. I think that well-written things are fun, even if the topics are, real heavy.
Yeah, I think maybe we should, to clarify, it's actually super deep and dark.
Yeah, it's not fun.
And if you know anything about Frida Kahlo and her life, lots of pain, lots of intensity and tragedy, and that is very much pulled out in this diary and in the introduction by Carlos Fuentes and the essay by Sarah M. Lowe.
Isn't Sarah M. Lowe the one who goes through and just kind of like breaks down chunks of her diary throughout?
Mm-hmm.
So this book is so cool because you get her full diary in color, the way that she basically, as close as possible to her original diary. So someone really went through and meticulously scanned all of her diary pages. So you get, like, the first chunk of it is her writing the way it was in her book. And then the last part of the book itself is sort of a broken down page-by-page interpretation of each page in the diary, which is super helpful because A, it's in Spanish, and B, it's very difficult to read, but visually it's very interesting.
It's more akin to like a sketchbook, I'd say, than
Oh,
a
definitely.
traditional diary. So
Truly.
for artists too, it can be kind of inspiring to get ideas on how to just like take your sketchbook to the next level.
Definitely.
I wonder if any artist has ever just written a diary without making it kind of a sketchbook.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Her diary is definitely a place to hold her extra thoughts and like her extra sketches and stuff. It does not read as though it was ever meant to be read, which, as is pointed out in the essay, makes it kind of complicated and interesting because you have that issue of like reading someone's diary.
I know,
and
it's kind of perverse.
it's kind of intrusive and
yeah.
voyeuristic in a way. However, it is also very, I think, illuminating and fascinating and poetic. Like, I love the pages where she just does, like, lists of words, like, in a very, like, stream of consciousness type way. She'll just, like, list words and to see how they, like, connect.
Should we read one? This one's kind of cool.
And not to mention, this would be considered a, first person source or first, what are they called?
Yeah.
Been out of academia for
a primary source?
Primary source.
Primary.
Which is always good.
I learned
Professors
one
are always-
thing in grad school.
This is a
than
primary
me.
source. It's a primary source as long as
It's in her.
you're sourcing her, but if you're sourcing the writer, then is a secondary source.
Oh, now we're getting messy.
Yeah,
Now I
It's
don't
like a
know.
twofer. It's 2 in 1.
Yeah.
for real. And that is the cool thing about the way her entries are broken down. The person who wrote it, she does a really good job of pulling out analysis. So you have basically her thoughts on what these entries mean, which is just kind of another layer of how you can look at the book. It's just beautiful.
I love this page.
So cool. Oh, this is interesting. This is like Frida as Nefertiti, and it's talked about in the back and like kind of examining that symbolism and why Frida would kind of align herself with.
We need a Nefertiti episode.
We really do. We really do.
I can't believe we haven't done that already.
Yeah, she comes up a lot.
I can't believe it, actually, because our list of episodes that we want to do is like
forever. In that introduction by Carlos Fuentes, it is a really fantastic kind of portrait of both Frida Kahlo and like her life and her pain, but it also is like deeply historical. I think it does a fantastic job of rooting Frida in a place and time and a political climate, and that is just necessary information if you want to kind of take a first step in learning more about Frida and her work. This one's just a must-have. You should all go get it, probably.
We endorse this book.
Art History Babes endorsement right there. We should get a sticker.
We need a sticker.
Yeah.
Should we just start putting our stickers on it?
Yeah. We'll just put our stickers on our books.
We're just going to start doing that until it catches on.
I love it. I think it's a brilliant idea. AHB Book Club right there. What do we got next?
Kahlo by Andrea Kettenmann. Here's the cover. Beautiful, full color.
It's a Toshin. They're just known for killing it all the time.
Once again.
In the art history department.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Toshin and who's the other one?
Oh.
Phaidon.
Oh.
Phaidon.
Wow, I would have never thought of that. I forgot about them completely.
Nice little short biography. Really well written. I like Andrea Kettenmann's writing a lot. She goes chronologically through Frida's life. There's 6 parts and then a timeline at the end. She goes chronologically but also thematically. She breaks each section kind of into a theme. So we've got Peg-Leg Frida, a rebellious girl, the delicate dove and the fat frog, a Mexican artist in Gringolandia.
There you go.
Okay. Despair and success. These surgeons' sons of bitches. I hope the exit is joyful. And then Frida Kahlo, life and work. Kettenmann's really good about picking up on what's happening in Frida's life and these kind of different kind of monumental experiences that shape her life and kind of send her on these different trajectories. So like having polio as a child, and then obviously the accident, meeting Diego, falling in love with Diego.
Oh, Diego.
The time,
all of
time
saga.
spent in the U.S., time spent, the divorce
the
is
remarriage.
a big part, divorce and remarriage, and in that time, Frida being in Europe. Breaking down Frida's life, there's sort of a convention in art history in the study of Frida Kahlo into how you break down her life, and I feel like this book does a really solid job. A through Z list of what you should know about Frida Kahlo and her life and the people involved in her story. It's just a really great book with a lot of super high resolution images.
Just the amount and the quality. They go through the trouble of including a lot of works they don't even go over in the essays, which is important. Because
Especially if you're starting like a research project and you're like, I don't really know what I want to do, but I want to do something on Frida Kahlo.
This is a good primer,
Yeah, you want a book
really
that
good place to
has
start.
a lot of images that you can maybe draw your own conclusions about, even if there isn't much written on them. You know?
And I should say, great visual analyses. Like, there's a few per section, and she does a really good job. So if someone wants to just kind of like have a set of nice examples on how to do a solid visual analysis where you start with truly the visual and then jump into references and all of these interesting things, Kettenmann does a really great job.
That's so helpful.
It really is. Like, I know that can be really difficult for people starting out. So this is from Bertrand D. Wolfe, and it says, though André Breton told her she was a surrealiste, she did not attain her style by following the methods of that school, quite free also from the Freudian symbols and philosophy that obsess the official surrealist painters. Hers is a sort of naive surrealism which she invented for herself, while official surrealism concerns itself mostly with the stuff of dreams, nightmares, and neurotic symbols. In Madame Rivera's brand of it, wit and humor are predominant. I don't know how to that wrong.
Dominate.
Yeah, that's
Predominate?
predominate. I think that is.
Yeah, I think that is a
new
word.
It is a
Predominate.
verb.
You know how you dominate? You can
can
also
also
predominate.
predominate.
All right. Oh, sorry.
Dang.
Yeah, so her whole chapter on the surrealism, I think, just handles it really well with, like, acknowledging her connection to surrealism, but also separating her from it appropriately, and kind of talking about her disdain for surrealism once she got to Paris and her really negative experience with it there.
I think that is a really good
Yeah.
quote to kind of sum up just that relationship to what she has historically been labeled as.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's no question that her work has a surreal,
Nature to
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
but truly I think that there is sort of a schism there, and
Yeah.
she's drawing upon a different sort of well of inspiration.
And I
Mhm.
think some art historians want to just, like, their ego gets in the way in wanting to be like, she was a surrealist, and wanting to kind of prove their theses to death. And Kettenmann does a good job of really just laying out how it was for Frida, like how it related to her.
And you just described what a lot of art history is, which is a lot of people trying to say that they have the right answer.
Yeah, it's a topic when it comes to Frida that I just find very interesting because surrealism is kind of what brought me to her when I was like really young.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's really good arguments on both sides. Like there are things about Frida's work that are surreal and like
Absolutely.
play in that world. And there are things about Frida's work that are definitely set her apart from the group of core surrealists, and so I think there are a lot of really good arguments on both sides. We hashed through that quite a bit in our Frida episode, I think.
Yeah.
Way back when.
Wow. That was a long time ago.
It was a while ago, but that'll be linked down below for you, our Frida podcast episode. So if you want to hear more about whether or not Frida was a surrealist, you can definitely check that out.
Yeah. Check it out. Just anyway.
Yeah,
If you haven't.
I mean,
Yeah, why not?
obviously.
Obviously.
Book number 3,
Frida's Bed.
Frida's Bed.
Which is a really interesting, maybe aptly titled book for a novel. So this is a novel.
Yes, and this actually, I got this from Jen during our Christmas, like, white elephant gift-giving extravaganza.
Yeah, that was fun. Frida's Bed, as we know, Frida spent a lot of time in her bed. So, Slavenka Drakulic? I don't know.
Slavenka Drakulic, maybe? She is, I know this, she is,
Romanian?
I think, Croatian.
Croatian.
Oh, okay.
She's Croatian. I actually read this, like, right after, like, I had gotten it from you, so many months ago, and I'm sure I had just like all sorts of very interesting insights, but I've forgotten a lot of them by now. However, what I do remember about this book is, like, one, it's just a very enjoyable read. Very easy, quick read. It's well written. I really like her writing style. And it is a novel. So, first and foremost, it's fictionalized, but it comes very much from truth. So much so that there were times where, like, especially early on, because for me, I know when I read, especially when I read novels, it sometimes takes me a couple chapters to really get a hang of the author's style and, like, what's really going on. And so, like, the first few chapters, I was, like, kind of struggling. I was like, wait, is this a novel or is this a biography? Like, because it is so true to her story in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's hard to tell a story about Frida without giving a gigantic chunk of biographical information, like, right off the bat.
Well, and we know so much. Like, there's so many artists that we don't know too much about, or they like to keep their personal lives personal. Like, we know so much about Frida, like, thanks to her diary, thanks to...
Right, honestly, and that's why I don't feel too bad about reading the diary, because I think that, and, you know, I don't have, like, a personal relationship with her or anything, but I think she would have been okay with everyone reading her diary, because I feel like in many ways her work was super autobiographical. If we could call her work anything, I think more than surreal, autobiographical.
So I wonder, though, because... So in the Kettenmann book, she kind of goes over how when Frida's work was first viewed by people, she was really kind of in a state of panic because it was not meant to be viewed by anyone. It was so personal to her, and she only ever made it as like an outlet for herself and would never really thought through other people's reactions or responses. That she kind of had a little bit of like a, so I wonder like how she would have felt about everyone reading.
Well, we're gonna bust out a Ouija board for Halloween, and we're gonna ask her ourselves.
Oh, that would be so
Frida
cool.
seance.
If Frida came through in a seance, like,
but what if she's
I would be
She's
done.
gonna be pissed, dude. And we're gonna be like, I'm
not ready for that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, because I have all sorts of like journals that are kind of like
I'd be mortified
similar.
if anyone read anything.
Yeah.
My journal from like middle school.
So dramatic.
I understand a lot of her style of journaling because I don't have a lot of journals that are like my day-to-day. I mean, I have some that are like my day-to-day goings on, but a lot of times I just have notebooks that I just like dump feelings in or thoughts in or just scraps of stuff in, and that's very much what this is. And like when I go back and look at all these disjointed thoughts, like it's interesting to me because it's my brain, but I would not want anyone else
I'm always really
searching through that.
embarrassed.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
always like, oh,
Like,
no.
Yeah.
What was wrong with you?
I didn't write that.
But she's so naturally inclined to kind of be an open book because, like I said, her diary to me looks so much like my sketchbooks. And my sketchbooks when I got a little more comfortable with my art making and my concepts and all of that. So she just naturally like does things in a way that's really presentable because my sketchbook, I always knew that people would look at it. You know, it's like it was for me, but I also knew that it would be seen. So it was kind of this hybrid of personal and performative, whereas hers just reads that way, even with no intention of making it something for viewing.
So I'm gonna pull a wild card.
Oh.
We said 3 books, but I would like to propose a 4th. There's a great book by one Barbara Kingsolver called The Lacunae, and it is not necessarily a Frida Kahlo story, but it's about a young boy from the U.S. in the early 20th century whose mom moves him and them down to Mexico, and it's this kind of just whimsical sort of situation where he ends up meeting Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera and like working for them. And it's fiction. This didn't happen, but it's a great book, and it's a big chunk of a book. So if you want some Frida fan fiction in a way, you should check that book out.
Yeah,
it's
that sounds
really,
great.
really good. I just finished it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to start it again.
Just right back to page 1.
It's definitely,
She
yeah, I was like, meh.
No.
It's definitely like, it's an amazing book.
Kind of going back to this one before we bounce here. What I did want to kind of bring up about this book is, while in a lot of ways it is very true to Frida's story, it is also a successful novel in the sense that I think the author's voice comes through more than Frida's voice. I think a lot of the really compelling stuff, like the really well-written passages, are an expression of the author working through ideas about pain and mortality and stuff like that. And that makes a good novelist, you know, so that's definitely not a negative thing. I think that makes it a successful novel, but also is important to remember, like, that's not Frida, that's the novelist doing a good job. Also, like, as much as I really enjoyed it and think, you know, if you're a Frida lover, you should definitely check it out. This shouldn't be the only book about Frida that you read.
Or the first one, even.
I mean, you could start here, I think. If you wanted, but you need to read
real confused. Like, what is happening?
I mean, like, because it tells it, like, I feel like starting here is very similar to starting by watching the movie with Salma Hayek. I feel like it's very similar, and that's an okay place to start, but don't stop there, because you're going to miss a lot of, like...
Although that's a great film.
It is a great film. Definitely worth picking up and checking out, but don't let it be the only book you read about Frida, because we just gave you 4, plus there's a lot more out there.
We said 3, and we gave you 4, so.
So there you go, and there's also a Frida podcast by us that you can listen to.
Check it out.
So much Frida homework for you to go do now. That was 3 books on Frida Kahlo. if you've read any of them, if you have any ideas, you want to join the conversation, make sure you leave a comment down below. If you have more suggestions, more books on Frida that people should check out, make sure you throw that in the comments. If you have any ideas or suggestions on what we should do for our next 3 books adventure, let us know in the comments. And like the video, and subscribe to the channel, and share it with all your friends.
Please share.
Please.
And subscribe.
Please share and subscribe.
Yeah.
And check out the podcast. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. You're the best. We love you, and we will catch you next time. Then go. It's going to be... Oh, we need to do an Instagram live real quick, too.
Can I do that?
Yeah, I'll go get my phone. We can do that.
Cool. Do you want to just do it off my phone?
Ew, look at my gross butt.
Look at it.
That's gonna be in the video.
Oh, is it recorded?
I didn't realize we were still recording.
That's gonna be the intro. You just got yourself the intro.